Hello, 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 and welcome to the Pain Break Quarterly Slush Pile. We are so grateful that you've chosen to listen to this pod over the bazillions that you could be listening to. But as far as we know, we are still the only one that does what we do. And what we do is take as we're reading submissions, we're always kind of looking, would this be a great one for the pod? And we handle the submissions just like we would in an editorial meeting, where we read them aloud, discuss them at length, and then take a vote. So that's what you're about to overhear. Those of you who never have listened before, slushies know what's happening. Um, and it's great fun, and we're always so grateful to the poets that allow us to discuss the work and the occasional pieces of fiction. So go to pbqmag.org and you can look at the whole archive of doing this. We've been doing this a long time. I know that March 27th is our anniversary because it's also my father's birthday, but I forget how, I don't know if we're up to 6 years. Is this our fifth year? I don't know. We'll have to look into that and get back to you. But it's really one of the most fun things we do, I think, as a group. And I keep saying we. I'm Kathleen Volk Miller, and I'm going to volley this 6,000 miles away to Marion Wrenn. Hi,
And I
Marion.
receive it or catch that volley. Hi, it's Marion. I'm here in Abu Dhabi. I'm in my office at NYU, Abu Dhabi this evening, which is morning-ish for my friends on the East Coast. And I'm going to bounce it back to my friends on the East Coast to Lisa. Boink.
Good morning from Charlotte, North Carolina, where we just yesterday had a very light dusting of snow. So I know everyone went crazy. Yes, it was beautiful, did not disrupt anything, but it's been like 2 years since we've had any snow. So I will bounce it up to Canada with Dagne, who probably has snow. I don't know.
That's really interesting because we do. We have a little bit more than you. I think I'll be able to put together enough to probably throw a little snowball to Samantha.
Hi everyone, I'm Samantha. I am here at NYU in DC in a storage closet because I share an office. So I'm in a game-filled closet right now. And I'm going to shoot it back to Philly to our lovely co-op.
Hello, all. My name is Divina. Also, Nina goes really well. I'm currently stationed in my dorm because I have nowhere else that could possibly be. And I'm going to pass it off to our lovely, lovely tech person, Jess.
Hello, I'm Jess. I'm the Zoom technician, the sound engineer, and yeah, I'm currently in Philly in my apartment, where it is very cold, so I am very bundled up. No snow, unfortunately, but hopefully soon.
2024 time and space do not matter. Isn't it amazing?
Great.
It's so amazing. And yeah, we haven't had nary a flake up here, Lisa, so that's extra wild that you have snow and we have not had a flake. Um, so I think that we're ready to jump into some poetry. We are so appreciative that Kelly Egan has allowed us to look at her work today. And I say we jump right in. Who'd like to read the first one? We weather up.
May
Ironically,
I?
so you're not
Yeah,
going to be
I know, I know. May I? I'd love to.
okay, wonderful, Dagne. Thank you.
Thank you. Weather. Weather translated by walls into tongues, into tales, laughter in a group. I could swear that telltale entropic trill. And because the guest house is empty, because I've seen no one on the Sunday streets so far, I rush to see this group of Nordic tourists, surely 5 or 6 and blonde with puffy coats. I'm shocked to find the window looks down on just an empty lawn, churchyard still at that, doesn't even face the street, which is when I understand it was the wind, that early settlers were more alone than this. that disembodied vowels make alphabets with walls, and the body believes. Despite what I know, I go back to the window again and again. No one there will just not do. And isn't it the same as what the folklore tells? How on Christmas Eve, if a knock at the door comes, it's better to stay in bed, but the body is a maiden who says yes.
Well read.
I just love the whole feeling of that piece. It's just, and it's one that just makes me go wah, right back up to the top and through it again, in part
Right.
because at first I had to figure it out.
Right. And I love how you just said that too. It's like, whoop, right back to the top, right? And so, Slushies, when you look at this poem, right, you'll see these wonderful three-line stanzas and the line breaks in the first stanza, weathered, translated by walls, break into tongues, break into tails, long dash, right? And then when you get to the end of the poem, that's what it's resolved itself into, right? You're listening to the surprising sound, right, of wind against the windows, right? And then the vowels of the sound of wind against a building and the sense of emptiness. Really smart poem.
Yeah, and the kind of slender column of tercets really does work so well. I mean,
Yeah.
the line breaks here, as you point out with that first stanza, are really well considered.
And can somebody help me with the second stanza? Laughter in a group, I could swear. That telltale entropic trill. Entropic trill is delightful to say. But what the heck does that mean?
Well,
Entropic.
that's really interesting because, well, entropic comes from entropy, so it's
Mhm.
about chaos. But I
Mm.
thought, what an interesting word, word pairing. And as you say, Marion, I mean, I don't think I've ever in my life said entropic. Because I know entropy, I thought, okay, I think I know what that is.
Right.
But yeah, I'm sure I've never in my life used it in conversation or heard it in conversation. And yet it also sounds great here.
Doesn't it? It
Yeah.
does. Truly.
I think it can also mean like a dwindling. So
Mm-hmm.
if you use that in relation to laughter, like that
Oh, like
piercing,
yeah.
shrill, and then dwindling off, I think that makes sense in this usage.
That's a good point, Lisa. Yeah.
Yeah, right. So if entropy is that, what is it, the first or second law of thermodynamics?
Yeah,
Jason,
we
like,
return to randomness
right, like
effectively.
that,
Yeah.
and things tend toward chaos, right? So
Yeah.
that epic trill, I love Lisa's reading of that, right? Like that the laughter fades. And then all of that is just the act of the wind, and the mind is insisting on a narrative is great.
Yeah, because the mind's trying to grab that sense of dissipation and then make
Mhm.
sense of it. Yeah, yeah. I
I
feel
think
like, sorry, go ahead.
so sorry, but I think that this poem kind of reminds me of like the light flurry, like you're outside late at night and it's slowly starting to snow, but like in light flurries, everyone getting really excited, and that's what it really reminds me of. Although you hear the wind,
Yeah.
also like the way that I remember someone had used the word resolve, and for me, I think of music. So music, it kind of has like a resolution with certain chords, and that last stanza really kind of wrapped it all together, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
And it makes me think of that Rilke passage where he talks about the idea that poems are not emotions, they're experiences. And in a single poem, you see many cities and you go many places and you do many things. And I think that's, really that's what's happening here for me. Like it's not it has a narrative to it, but I also feel like the narrative isn't the point almost either. And I just feel like I've been thrusted in many experiences, and very much like you said, Dagne, at the beginning, I also just went back and reread it as soon as I finished it.
Mm.
I don't know any better compliment you can give a writer.
Exactly, exactly. Because I think there are a lot of poems out there where you can read them and think, oh, okay, that was nice. It wasn't a bad experience, a good experience, but there isn't that drive to head back up to where it begins and go through it and experience it again. And I agree. To me, that's the biggest compliment. It's so simple and it's such a great indicator of poetry that's also worth discussing.
I
I'd like
appreciate
to make a note. Oh, sorry, Kathy.
you go, Lise. Go ahead.
The first 8 stanzas are one sentence, which I think
Yeah.
has something to do with the way this rolls. This experience of mistaking the sound gets you almost to 3/4 of the way into the poem, which is an interesting propulsion.
Mhm.
I was just going to say that I love when a poem makes us think about something that is so small and normal, and that you never really think about like in quite this way, Not only is it the weather speaking to the speaker, but the idea of like the body still wanting to hold on to what they know isn't the truth, but still wanting, no one there will just not do.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? That refusal to accept the truth. Something has to be happening out there, right? No one there will just not do. I love that line. Um, Although I'm wondering, does anybody know the folklore? I'm curious about that.
That I have a question about that and also the turn at the end. I wondered if the folklore referred to the Bible story, but I wasn't sure. And that leap, it was a big leap for me. So I
Yeah, me
wonder how
too.
other people read it.
Yeah, I want to know what's under that kind of. Because I get that the way I'm reading it is um the body, if you hear a knock at the door, it's probably not really a knock, but the body believes it is a knock, right? But I actually think I need to know the that Christmas Eve folklore to truly get this.
So I don't know that lore, but I don't know if you've heard the cliche, never answer the door after midnight, right? Anything that comes to your door
Yeah.
after midnight before 6 a.m. ain't good news, right? But so that's why
Yeah,
I was
Yes.
surprised at the turn to maiden, right?
but it's
So
Christmas Eve. I think that's pretty crucial. How on
right,
Christmas Eve, if a knock at the door comes, don't answer,
Right. I
right?
mean, that's, I think, so that led me obviously to Mary, right? But
right.
but she was visited by an angel, which you also have the stories of angels in disguise might knock on your door, right? Um,
Right.
which is a Christian, I guess, folklore.
But
But when the angel came to Mary, she became pregnant, right? But that wasn't on Christmas
right,
Eve. That would have been before.
right, right.
Sometime
And
before, yeah.
and the angels at your door are also anytime, right? That you could, yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah. I
I
mean,
don't know.
go ahead,
did you
Sam.
look it up, Sam?
No, but I
Oh,
mean, I thought immediately of, just Mary and Joseph looking for the inn.
Right.
I really think most people probably would go there if, the 6 of us or 7 of us don't recognize the folklore. I think we can probably assume that that's what most people would think of, I would think. And so it seems to me like somehow metaphorically rejecting the idea of a savior. Um,
Mm.
and I'm interested in that idea of the Selkies at the end because I can't figure out how Selkies, which are mythological creatures that I really like,
Oh,
relate
they
to.
come in the later poem. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
I will see like if this
Yeah.
person is like playing with that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Because these poems are all are part of a project
Hmm.
that in the polar region.
okay. So I looked it up. and it seems that it's a Norwegian folktale where trolls might knock on your door on Christmas Eve. And if you let them in, they gobble up your Christmas feast.
Ah, well, I guess
How
Wow.
about that?
that's appropriate with the setting. It's in a kind of in a polar setting, a northern polar setting, and
I love that actually. I mean, I love it. I also didn't need to know it. If bear with me. I know like it's sort of a surprise turn at the end, how on Christmas Eve, if a knock at the door comes, like I'm so surprised by that turn, but it follows like no one there will just not do. And isn't it the same as what the folklore tells me? It's like the invocation of folklore for me is almost the same as once upon a time. It does the same thing, that phrase in my mind. It sort of suspends all my disbelief and I'll believe whatever you tell me after you invoke folklore. Right?
Yeah.
So yeah, so I'm bumped by it, but not in a way that doesn't also keep me entranced.
Yeah. I wanted to see if it gave the poem an even another layer of meaning,
Yeah.
of understanding. Because, like Lisa said, I think I'm a little, um, it, kind of, I don't want to say whiplash, not as strong as whiplash, but a young maiden in her bed saying yes is so not where I've been, right? The person is awake and looking out the window, not laying in a bed. You know what I'm saying? And I don't even know, I didn't gender that speaker, but to suddenly have to imagine the maiden laying in the bed saying yes, and I feel like there's a sexual connotation there that had not been present for a nanosecond anywhere else.
hmm.
And
So,
we also have, I mean, if we're going to the Mary story, which, we know she's a young girl, really, in the Bible story, so I think that also makes it complicated. I don't know. I am so with this poem in that initial cascading sentence that goes through those first 8 stanzas and right up through no one there will just not do. But I think I don't know, the leaps at the end are I do get whiplash, I think. I'm
Well, that's
surprised.
interesting. I
Mhm.
I don't, and I don't know why. I certainly agree that those lines called my attention in a different way and made me question a little bit. But I guess there's something about the experience of all that came before and kind of the voice, if you will, of the speaker here. I don't know. It wasn't a whiplash effect for me, and I'm prepared to say, okay. Okay. Yeah.
Well, that sounds to me like this is going to be an exciting vote. Are we ready to vote?
Mm.
Okay.
all
Ready?
right,
Go ahead,
let's do
Kath.
it. 1, 2, 3. And it's in.
Woohoo!
Thank you, Kelly Egan.
Okay. Thank you,
Yeah.
Kelly Egan.
And I've learned so much now about trolls.
Yeah, that is an interesting little anecdote to tell on Christmas Eve.
Nice.
They mustn't have like open houses on Christmas Eve like we do.
That's right. That's right.
I'm
I'm
letting
not
everybody in
going.
on Christmas Eve.
Do not
Can
come to
I
my
add
house. Yeah.
one little very interesting tidbit about trolls?
Do tell.
Mhm.
Yeah.
There's this guy, I think his name is Thomas Dambo, and he builds trolls all over the world using recycled material, and he hides them in the woods and then just announces there's a new troll, and people find them and then post pictures of them, and they're all different. They're pretty marvelous. So seek those out.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow. We'll put him in the notes. That's amazing.
I
Yeah,
love that. So like the Banksy of trolls. I love it.
that's really cool.
That's a great little insertion. Thanks,
What
Lisa.
a great, I have to think like a mercenary for a second too. Like how smart, what a smart move. He announces there's a new troll in this patch of woods, and then people do all the promo for him,
That's
right?
brilliant. Yeah.
It becomes its own thing.
I love
That's
it.
very cool. Um, okay, well, thank you again, Kelly. And now we have another one from her, birch liqueur, or yeah, liqueur? No, liquor? Just liquor.
Are we doing that one before a church on a mound?
Oh, did I skip? I'm so sorry.
No, no.
Sorry, Kelly. Sorry, everybody. I did. I scrolled too fast. A church on a mound looking out to the sea.
I'll read that one.
Yay. Thank you, Samantha.
Sure. Okay. A church on a mound looking out to the sea. Mossy fingerlings of final land, then the oceanic, corridor to the other pole, terns fly in their record-long migration, linking polar summers into endless day. What to do at any edge, but pray, fly, wait. I circle the church. It is neat and kept, a pocket of God, now locked to us wandering heretics. Still, it is a scar. I grab onto, if anything, as a place to stand, looking out, to park and to pee, imagine Selkies, responsible for the whelps coming off a southern-facing rock, so close and impossible to reach.
Oh, nice.
Such an interesting poem.
Thank you, Sam. Now, Slushies, you're going to have to go to the pbqmag.org and take a look. This one's much harder to describe how it's set up than the other one. We've got some two-line stanzas, some three-line stanzas, and many of them are more deeply indented. So you got to just go look.
I love that moment. What to do at any edge but pray. And then fly and wait to kind of come along, almost like the tail of that. But it's really lovely at establishing the mood in these first three short stanzas, and then there's the indent to this moment, and I just found that really quite cool.
And I love, as I said earlier, about the Selkies, and I love a narrator who is, seeing kind of this magical world and like the possibilities of transformation kind of in like, normal, places. It makes me think I interviewed my friend, the poet Walter and Caro once, and he travels a lot. And I asked him, like, how does your traveling influence your poetry? And he said, it doesn't. My poetry like influences my travel, like my reading changes how I see the world. And I think like that's was a nice reminder for me, and definitely something I'm going to steal if anyone ever asks me. But I also think that's what this is for me. Like this is a person who has somehow internalized all these stories and, folklore, like perhaps from the last poem or whatnot, and like sees the world through that lens.
Oh, I like that, Sam.
Even in this harsh climate of this, cliff and this,
Oh, this is so good. Samantha, I'm busy jotting down that phrase, right? The sort of inversion of like, does travel impact your poetry? No, the poetry impacts the travel, right? I love that idea. And I love too the way this poem sort of sutures its metaphors or sutures its images. And bear with me with that for a minute, right? So mossy fingerings of final land, then the oceanic corridor to the other pole. Terns fly in their record-long migration, linking polar summers into endless day. So that's, again, another, 6-line sentence, right? It moves over, 3 stanzas, right? And before the what to do at any edge but pray, my brain is still on the terns, thinking about the birds flying. And what's so cool is the line break after pray is fly, right?
Yeah.
And then the speaker circles the church. And this is what I mean by like suturing the images, right? There's something really beautiful about how like done in a seemingly effortless move, right? It's like you're in this location, you're noticing the birds, and then the birds' migration is somehow echoed in the circular movement of the speaker around the church. And so I just want to applaud that in this
Oh,
poem.
oh yeah. I mean, it creates a wonderful sense of movement and momentum, which also echoes the speaker's consciousness, which, as Sam was saying, is having an impact on the experience of this environment. It's really beautiful, all of the layers.
There, I would also like to call out in particular that stanza for its sounds and also for its boundaries. I think it is an edge of sorts. I circle the church. It is neat and kept, a pocket of God now locked to us wandering heretics. I mean, there's an edge there too that cannot be entered. And I love the sounds in that stanza.
Oh yeah.
But I will say the next stanza throws me, right? Still, it is a scar I grab onto, if anything, as a place to stand looking out, right? There's something a little I don't know what's the word I'm looking for, like bumpy. It's a little bumpy, right? Still like and it might be the still feels really rhetorical, right? Or and the if anything.
Yeah, I think when I read it, I actually thought I read it wrong at first because the if anything stopped me for a minute. So I agree.
Yeah, it's still it is a scar I grab onto, if anything, as a place. Yeah.
I'm
I
just
also have to say the infinitive to pee really really jolted me. I mean, I understand the necessities here, the physical necessities, but it just kind of broke the mood of this, beautiful place at the edge of the world.
at the
Right.
same time, I thought it was a little brave though to kind of pull us back to reality. And the previous stanza, as we're discussing, the still it is a scar. I'm just wondering, is this intentional? Because we're in this wonderful sense of flight, and then being kind of brought to a standstill by noticing being locked out of the church and kind of access to God, to spirituality in that realm. I'm just wondering if it's intentional to sort of jar us out and point to the fact that the speaker's actually looking for a handhold now.
Yeah. Well, it's funny, like, and I'm so glad, right, to be thinking of Selkies in this poem and then thinking back to the lore of the prior poem and Slushies. We always try to keep these poems separate when we're reading them, but
Hmm.
I'm really like glad to be thinking about how lore like functions in both. Um, because I think there's something about the way the body emerges at the end of both of these as well, right? So you get this surprise turn, like this of, the maiden at the end of the first poem. And here it's like, you gotta pee. If you gotta pee, you gotta pee, right? And that's an urgency, right? And the body is asserting itself, right? And then the notion of the Selkie is a story of transformation, right? Of one body peeling itself off for another, right? Like the human becomes a seal, right? Or sea lion, I forget which, and vice versa, right? So that, the insistence of the body in this poem is sort of a fascinating, I think, trigger for the turn. But for me, it's a little like jangly, like as it does that here, right? Like whereas in the first poem, I wasn't thrown by the whiplash, right? The whiplash is, I feel it stronger here.
Yeah. I agree, Marion, but I also believe in it because I think all that you said to me underscores what I feel the poet's trying to explore here, which is kind of the inescapability of our bodies and how they affect our experience
Yeah.
of the world.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's I absolutely right. The way the body is the traveler. You know what I mean? Like
Yes, yes,
right? Like that's
yes.
the lens through which we make sense of things.
Yeah, because we're sort of, warring between our consciousness and our bodies. They can often want to do things very differently from one another.
I'm hoping we can talk about the last stanza
Yes.
for what the Selkies are responsible for the whelps coming off a southern facing rock so close and impossible to reach. I had a little trouble making sense of the whelps, if that referred to giving birth or like puppies, or I guess maybe little baby selkies, baby seals.
So the lure, the Selkie, yeah, I think you're right. It's the baby seals, right? So
Yeah.
that lure of the Selkie, right, is that, right? Like the loved comes to you in the form of this seal, right? Um, and that's part of the trickster variation, right? So the Selkies are responsible for the whelps, right? The baby seals coming off a southern facing rock, right? So close and impossible to reach, because in that last line I think you get this fusion of the sort of magical thinking of the lore and then the actuality of the baby seals, right? And that I don't know, that those two things fuse together in this moment on this spit of land that's at the edge of the earth, right? So to speak, or the edge of the ocean, off to that oceanic corridor.
I think nicely explained, Marion. I like that.
So, and I forget the name of the movie, but there is a great story about the Selkie, and there's a movie with that Irish actor with the great eyebrows. Oh, I forget his name already, but he's like super handsome dude. All right, Jess, mark it in the recording so we can come back
Yes,
tell you
exactly.
who the actor is. Oh my
Yeah,
gosh, I always forget his name. But anyway, I think the movie is called Selkie, and he basically like rescues this sea creature who's this beautiful woman, and they fall in love, and it's the whole Selkie myth.
Oh, well, that sounds kind of appropriate to include here. Yeah. And I do want to say it's too bad that our Sam had to duck out at this point, because I think she loves all the Selkie lore, and might have had a little more to add, but I didn't want her voice just to be absent for the rest of this episode and for people not to know why.
Right? Absolutely. All
Yeah.
right, what do you think? Are you ready to vote?
I think we're ready to vote, and we have Sam's vote in the chat, so
Chat. All right. So, um,
Let's do it. 1, 2,
3.
3, vote. And it's in.
Okay.
Nice.
Oh, yeah. Wow. Fantastic. 2 for 2.
2 for 2, Kelly Egan. You go. Okay, now we're ready to read. And I still don't know. Do you guys
Well, I know it's fun to say birch liquor, but it's not. It's birch liqueur.
you think it
Right?
is liqueur?
I'm pretty
Okay.
sure.
And I would
All
say
right.
liqueur.
Liqueur.
I'm not correcting you. I'm not
No?
correcting you. I'm just adding another layer. I've been through the experience of living in England and having my employer correct me in meetings when I was in my 20s. When I was in my 20s, and I've never forgotten that. And it's like, nope, we all just
Yeah.
say things different ways. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember once being corrected on the job by a woman who owned an antiquarian bookshop, and we were at a book fair, and this was the first time I'd ever seen a first edition of The Great Gatsby in the original paperback, like paper, the jacket, right? So it was a hard book.
Yes.
The jacket's this extraordinary, colorful, almost rainbow effect, right? And so I was having emotions, right? I was like, oh my God, that's beautiful. She pinched the fat part of my arm so hard, right?
Oh my goodness.
And said simultaneously, gravitas, meaning keep your shit together, because
Yeah.
we're there trying to like buy books. So I didn't last long.
Honestly, what a response.
Were you driving up the price, Marion? Is that the trouble?
Apparently, like my enthusiasm for this gorgeous, book jacket was was exactly the wrong thing.
Yeah,
Anyway.
you weren't supposed to be kind of bubbling over like that, but still.
So, Davina and Jess, this was like, 25, 30 years ago. Hopefully things have changed that nobody pinches you to make a
Uh,
point. Okay.
exactly.
Anybody's seen the documentary, The Booksellers?
No.
No.
Yeah, so put that in the notes too. We've got a
Yeah.
whole
Okay. Oh,
yeah,
awesome, Kathy.
All right.
it's about
Perfect.
booksellers and it's really fascinating. Yeah.
All right. So, birch liqueur. Anybody want to read it?
I'm having too many audio problems. Why don't you do it, Mare?
All right. So hopefully I won't be raptured. All right. And also I do like saying birch liquor, even though that's not what this is. All right. So birch liqueur. Taste the way the island smells after rain when the leaves release their notes and the air is a cool, wet waterberry. First thing I noticed on arriving, the surprising nostalgia of it, as though my whole childhood smelled like this and now welcomes me to this distant land, leaving me with an image of Pangaea, the idea that if all were once of a piece, then really I am not so far from the deep familiar, but how defamiliar I've become. So I swallow the rich blood of xylem and phloem, swallow the distilled essence of here, fringed in pure corn spirit, the messenger biting as it spreads to the corners of my mouth, depositing to the bowl of my listening tongue a subtle pale gold, the sugared low light of here, of hers, Lady of the Woods. How else can I hear her daily sermons crouched low out of range? Weeks go by before I connect her transmissions to a scent I recognize. But so what? The sugar of nostalgia. Or maybe it's simply the carrier, and I must open the note. For now, a delicious liqueur I swallow whole.
Lovely. Nice read, Mary.
Thank you. What helped me with xylem and phloem?
They're part of plant structures and the transfer of, I think xylem does water transport and phloem will be other things like sugars.
Nice.
So remembering my plant biology a tiny
I
bit.
love how you're flexing. That's like poet science. Bam.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I think it helps that I had to homeschool one of my kids and we did a lot of science together. Yeah.
And Dagne from the land of maple syrup too.
Yes, totally. Yep, absolutely. Absolutely.
Mhm.
My first thought when analyzing this was why liqueur and not liquor? So I'm
Mhm.
not familiar, speaking from a legal standpoint, I'm not familiar with the difference between and liqueur. So I decided to look up the difference. And liqueur is liquor with added sugar and flavors, and often, though not always, has a lower proof, whatever that means. But what I like to think is that the poet specifically used liqueur to kind of tie in the sweet elements of their surroundings.
Mm.
If that, I don't know where else I could kind of go with that, but that was my first thought.
I love that. And I love that you're so young, you can't drink yet, and therefore not recommending that anyone who's under legal age should be consuming alcohol unless, of course, under the direction of your parents, guardians, or, other liquor
Other
advisors.
responsible people. Yeah.
Liqueur or liquor imbibing, folks.
Exactly. But thank you so much for just qualifying that distinction, because it does feel really I don't know, rich and sweet and syrupy, right? And it's in the way that this is being described, right? And I love, taste the way the island smells, right? There's I was lucky enough to be teaching a section of Proust's Remembrance of Things Past today, like the Madeleine scene where he dips the cookie in the tea. And that like iconic image, right, of him biting into the Madeleine and, off he goes on this sort of fantastic sort of experience of what memory and nostalgia is, has been picked up by Ratatouille, right? So if you watched Ratatouille when, right, the critic takes a bite of the ratatouille, has a Proustian moment, right?
Yeah,
And has
yeah.
also been picked up on the reality TV. It's like a cooking show called Somebody Feed Phil. And the Phil goes to Dubai, takes a bite of this kibbeh, right? This like raw meat, and has a Proustian moment, right? So like it's wonderful to think how that notion has sort of circulated across all kinds of cultural forms, because I feel it here too, right? That sense of all of the senses being activated by the smell or the taste of something, and that synesthesia, that smell and taste are all mixed up, right? And what the land is producing, right? That sort of art, right? Like it's coming from the tree, coming from the land. Um, and it's a hell of a lot of fun to read this piece. Just saying.
Well, it's also just got such nice sound layered into it. You have that kind of entry point of a subtle pale gold, the sugared low light of here, of hers, Lady of the Woods, how else can I hear her daily sermons? Just that play with here and her in that whole passage is really interesting and satisfying.
Dagne, I'm so glad you went there. What is that, the Lady of the Woods? Is that like a reference to vegetation, or like is that more folklore? Like what?
Well, I feel like that's probably more folklore, honestly. And you get the Lady of the Woods in stories like Lord of the
Right.
Rings, where
Yeah.
you've got elves and so on. So to me, it speaks to that and the notion of this kind of presence in the woods that can be either benevolent or malevolent, depending on the particular elf, for one thing.
So we also have Panagia. I'm not sure if
Yes,
I'm saying that right, but that's the continent that was all the continents before they broke apart. And
exactly.
I'm wondering if that is referred to as kind of I don't know, a mother image.
Mhm.
I don't know it that way, but I'm wondering if that has to do with the callback of um the Lady of the Woods, like some kind of origin story.
Oh, I think that's astute, Lisa. I like that. Yeah.
Going back to our analogy with movies, I know we mentioned Ratatouille, but another movie that this reminded me of was a Pixar movie called Soul. It wasn't too popular, but it was one that kind of reminded me of like the different hues of colors that one gets when they're kind of in the moment. So
Hmm.
in the movie Soul, we have our character, I think his name is Joe. I've never watched the movie. I've only seen like the pirated clips on TikTok, so my knowledge is very much limited. But the main character, his name is Joe, and he is a jazz performer who's kind of just venturing off and trying to understand his place in the world as a jazz performer. And it's not really I hate to say, but it's not exactly a profitable career path, but it's something
Yeah.
that he does love. And seeing it from his perspective, like the different hues, the different colors that he feels when he's playing on stage is kind of, I would say, what's the word? Similar to how this person is feeling, just taking that sip of liqueur.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Divina, that's great, right? And I think that really sort of gets to what hand gestures Dagne was just making. So Slushies, you can't see Dagne making like layers with her hands, right? But
Well,
I
I was
think
kind of marveling at Divina thinking, wow, that's all based on TikTok snippets. Imagine what you'd come up with, girl, if you watch the whole movie. Like, I'm so impressed by you. I just want to say kudos, Divina.
Thank you.
kids today don't watch whole movies, Dagne. No, I'm joking. Of course, I'm joking. But I'm glad you brought soul into this discussion too, because it's doing that sort of synesthesia, right? Like
Yeah.
the title in the first line, birch liquor tastes the way the island smells after rain, right? And it's the confusion of the senses that Pixar got really good at, both in Ratatouille and I think in Soul, of visually representing what the experience of the senses are, right? And so when, like in Ratatouille, when Remy's like combining like bread and mushrooms or tomato, whatever it is that he's combining, like there's these explosions of taste that they're trying to depict on screen, right? So using one media form to like a visual form to depict the sense of taste is wild, right? Or using a visual form to represent how music feels, right? That's, I think, what was happening in Soul as well, right? So it's nice to have that.
Marion,
Mm.
there's another really lovely couplet that goes to that in the middle of the poem, depositing to the bowl of my listening tongue. Just wanted to add that to your excellent observations.
Yes, right. And the description of like sipping the corn spirit, right? Like and it's a messenger, right? Like biting as it spreads to the corners of my mouth to pop, right? Like it's a great description of taking a shot of some liqueur.
It helps me to make sense of a pairing of words that I initially found jarring in this poem near the start, the waterberry. Yeah. So it goes, taste the way the island smells after rain when the leaves release their notes and the air is a cool, wet waterberry. And I think on my first reading, I found that kind of jarring. But talking about the experience of the senses and the way that we have been and you know, I just feel all of a sudden that waterberry makes sense, right? And then it lands on that listening tongue further down in the poem.
So I'm glad you said that, Dagne. It was actually hard to read, and it's just that space, water, berry. And I wonder if it's one word. You know what I mean? Like, or
Yeah.
to say waterberry, right? Like, that space made it tougher to read.
Yeah.
There was one thing before we kind of wrap this up, but there was one thing that I kind of slowly realized, and I wanted to wait till the third poem. And it's kind of these small and like introductions of religion. Like there would be small keywords in each poem. Like for the first poem, it was maiden. Second poem, it was God, very in your face. But the third one is sermon. So I want to figure out what the author is trying to tell us with these small little hints and notes in each poem.
Oh, I like that, Divina. Yeah.
Good eye. Good eye. Okay. Shall we vote? What do you
I
think?
think so. Yeah.
Okay.
Let's do it.
Okay. 1, 2, 3, vote. Ha! I think that's in. We have Samantha's vote, right?
Yes.
And the other yeses. So congratulations. That's 3 for 3.
Oh,
Bravo,
thank you, Kelly Egan.
Thank you, Kelly. So good. Bravo, Kelly Egan. And here we are at the end of the episode. And I am speaking on behalf of Team Awesome here. We've been confronted by several technological glitches.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to interject. Kelly Egan, my heart hurts for how little I was able to participate in this conversation about your poems. Please know it was no reflection on you. I'm having big, bad, terrible technological difficulties this morning. So apologies, no reflection.
And still you persist, right? And still you persist, right?
Trying.
And those of us who are able will toast you, Kelly, with birch liqueur.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
I like birch beer. I think I'd like some
Perfect.
birch liqueur.
Here it is.
Okay, does anybody have anything else they'd like to say? All right then. Keep reading, turning in, and bye.
Bye. Keep reading poems.
Woo, yeah.
Drink birch liqueur.
Thank you. Thank you.
Woo!
The
Only if
cure.
you're over 21.
Thank you for that, Dagne.
Drink liqueur and read poems.